This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon and welcome to this a sunrise safari on a beautiful winter's afternoon. The sun is shining, there's a few little white puffy clouds in the sky, but generally it's beautiful weather to be out on a game drive, and the temperature is absolutely perfect. So it promises to be a good afternoon. My name is Tristan. On camera I have got Alex this afternoon. Welcome back, Alex. Nice to have you back in Djuma. And the last time a lot of you would have seen Alex was when he was in Karongwe with Taylor, and so now he's back here with us at Djuma for a little bit, which will be good. Now, of course, it is a very warm welcome to all the kids that are joining us from around the world this afternoon. And this first 45 minutes is dedicated to you guys, and so we want to hear all the questions that you have, and you can just send them through to kidsquestions at WildEarth.tv, and we'll try and answer as many as possible. Now, the plan for the afternoon is, well, to bumble around a little bit while it's still fairly warm, and see if we can maybe find some elephants. There's a Steenbok. This is our very, very relaxed little male Steenbok that we see. This particular Steenbok got relaxed when we were still doing a lot of walking. So we used to do bushwalks every day. In the mornings and in the afternoons, and it got so used to us walking around that it's now become quite tame to the vehicle, and it possibly is the most relaxed Steenbok in this whole area, because generally they are very shy. They don't actually like to sit still. Normally what they do is they see the car, and then if the car stops, then they run away quickly, and then they try and hide somewhere. And that's the way that they survive, because normally if there's something big close by, it's better for them to try and get into an area and hide away and not be too obvious, because obviously they are eaten by a number of different predators. So it's very strange when they sit still like this. But this particular one, even if you're walking here, will sit like that as well. He won't run away unless you get really close. Then he'll start to move. But they really are cute little antelope. I like Steenbok. Super fast creatures as well. I feel sorry for this particular boy, though, because he seems to be battling to find himself a girl. I haven't seen a girl with him. These guys, when they find a girl, will live together with her forever, like a married couple. And unfortunately, it seems as though he hasn't had much luck. Oh, nice big stretch. What you doing? That's very cool. But unfortunately, like I say, I haven't seen him with the wife yet. So it's still obviously looking and making sure. But the fact that it's laid down right next to us like this just gives you an indication of how the Steenbok feels no threat from us whatsoever. If it was threatened by us, it would stay standing, and it would make sure that it was very alert and keeping its eyes and ears on us and ready to be able to run away at a moment's notice. When they sit down like this, it's almost indicating to us that it is relaxed. It knows that we're not going to hurt it, and therefore it will just lie down and kind of take it easy. And what it's doing at the moment, it almost looks like it's chewing bubble gum, but it's not. It's ruminating. And so rumination is a way that a lot of our antelope out here feed. It gets very hot here, particularly in the summer. And so in the middle of the day, to be out in the sun trying to find food is not great. It takes a lot of energy, and it's uncomfortable. And so this ruminating, is part of it, is to help with that. It means that they can feed early in the morning and late in the afternoon when it's cooler. And then they can spend the hot part of the day as well as the night regurgitating, so basically bringing the food that's in their stomach up to their mouth, and then re-chewing it. And what that does is it means that they absorb all the nutrients from that vegetation, and then they are able to maximize and feed far less when they do this. So it's a very clever way to do things. It also means that they don't spend as much time with their head down in the grass. They can look out for predators and stay a lot safer by doing this. Haley and Ashton, how fast can these guys run? Very fast. They are incredibly quick and agile. They'll be doing probably, I'm not sure where you guys live in the world, but they'll do easily about 60 to 70 kilometers an hour, depending on the bush that is around them. So there we go. You're in Johannesburg, so I can use kilometers an hour. For those that are in the northern hemisphere that use miles, it will be about 50 miles, 45 to 50 miles for these guys. So pretty quick. They move very, very fast. The one thing that hunts these guys a lot is cheetah and wild dogs. Cheetah because it's so fast and it's able to keep up with them, and wild dogs because they often use the pack to be able to chase them down. Leopards do hunt them every now and then, but are not very successful unless they can get really close, and that's just because of how fast and agile the Steenbok is. They prefer to hunt Diker, which is a little bit slower than these guys. These guys are like little rocket-propelled antelope. They move very, very quickly. What a cool sighting, though. It took us about 2 years to get this Steenbok to relax the way that this one has. And like I say, that's because literally every day we used to walk past it, and so it's learned that our voices and the cars and us walking around is not something it has to worry about. We don't hunt it, and the first few times it would have run away, but now it's super chilled. Very cool. All right, I think we'll leave our Steenbok to itself and carry on and see what else we can find. In the meantime, though, I'm going to send you back across to David, who wants to say good afternoon, and let's tell us what his plan is for today.
Very good afternoon to each and every one of you. We've just set off from camp, starting to work the western part of the reserve. We're currently along the Buffelshoek boundary. And just briefly stopped to admire this beautiful herd of Impala. My name is David Hancock, and on camera we have BK again this afternoon. Lovely to be out here with each and every one of you watching from wherever you are in the world. And we're looking forward to an exciting afternoon, hopeful of whatever it may bring. These Impala seem very relaxed in the shade there. Looks like they spent most of the day under that gori bush. As we were talking about this morning, should be coming to the end of the rutting season now. Many of these females may already be pregnant, perhaps not all. Leia, age 6. Good afternoon and welcome to the show. It's great to hear from you. You've asked what is the difference between Springbok and Impala. Well, they've got lots of similarities. They are both antelope. Similar habits and similar ranges. Home ranges where they like to spend their time. But I guess the most striking difference is their coloration and the way they look. Springbok are a lot lighter and whiter than Impala. Impala have this reddish brown color. We don't get Springbok up here. We get them in the further west in the country. The last time I ever saw Springbok was when I was in Namibia, in Etosha National Park. the big male I was looking for on the right hand side. I was wondering where he was. Perhaps he was the dominant male of this group of females. There are some other younger males in this group, looking a bit mixed. Well, we're going to continue on, see what else we can find. It sounds like Tristan has found a warthog.
I have not found just one warthog, I have found 3 warthogs, and surprisingly enough, 3 warthogs that are not running away from me, which is very, very interesting, because generally, warthogs in this area, they see a car, and they're not wanting anything to do with us, and they just run quickly and go and hide somewhere. So I'm very surprised that these 3 are sitting as still as they are, and as close as they are. I don't know what it is about this road this afternoon, but everything seems to be wanting to be our friend, and keep very, very close. Now, they're all boys that we have here. It's 3 boys together. It's quite odd though. I generally don't see 3 big kind of warthogs. I mean, they're not monsters yet, but you generally don't see 3 of this size hanging around with one another. It might be that they were all in the same litter at one point, and they've left their mom at the same time, and so that's why they're kind of hanging around and spending time together. But basically what they're doing is just having a bit of a feed. They would have had a nice mud wallow at some of the wallows behind me. Just behind me here is these kind of areas that elephants and buffalo have dug out. And with all the rain we had during the course of the summer, they fill up with water, and they make this perfect place for a warthog to go and have the best mud bath. And so they go and they mud bath during the hot part of the day, and then after that they come out and they start feeding. And you can see how that warthog does feed. It's very different to the Impalas and the Steenbok. Like we saw just now, the Steenbok was regurgitating food. These guys, well, they go onto their knees, and then they use their nose. So they have like a disc-like nose, so a round nose, and that nose is quite hard. And they use the nose to dig, and so they'll be able to dig up roots and tubers and all these nutritious things that sit underneath the surface of the soil. So in summer, you don't see them feeding like this as much. In summer, they feed off the grasses on top where the seeds are, but now in winter, they put their head down and they put their nose to the ground, and they use their nose to be able to try and dig up those roots to be able to eat them. Such funny animals, though. Don't know if you can even hear them eating. Sometimes when they're digging like this, you can actually hear the nose going to work and pushing little grasses and roots and those kinds of things. I believe you can faintly hear them. They're not as noisy. I will admit they're not as noisy as a domestic pig or a bush pig when they feed, but you can still hear them feeding from time to time, especially if they're as close as these guys are. Now you'll notice with these guys that I called them boys, and you might be wondering why. And the reason that they're boys is that if you look at these guys when they have their face pointing towards us, is that they have an extra set of very, very big warts. So by their eyes, they have 2 warts, and in the middle of their face, near their tusks, there's another little set that grows out. And so that's how you know boys. Girls don't really have that. They might have a little bump there, but they don't have big, pronounced ones like these boys do. So it's an easy way to sex or to be able to tell a boy from a girl when you're looking at warthogs. Aaron, how do we make sure all the animals have food? Well, we don't. This is a very natural system. It's a very big system. This area is huge, and so the animals have a lot of space to move. But sometimes we have what's called droughts. So droughts is when we get no rain now. And I don't know if you remember a few years ago, the whole of South Africa was having a drought. And what that meant was that not enough rain fell, and then the animals ate too much grass and too much vegetation, and it meant that the place was barren. There was no food really for the animals, and then the animals start to die. Now, the reason why we don't get involved in this particular system is because the system is so big, it's basically self-regulating, or it's looking after the numbers on its own accord, and those droughts are important to sometimes keep certain animals in control. Because otherwise, if it was they were fed all the time and we made sure that they were always safe, you would get things like hippos and buffalo, and their numbers would get way, way, way too big. And because of how large they are, they would then maybe take food away from something like a warthog. So nature comes in and these droughts happen, and it will just decrease all of the grazing animals or all of the browsing animals, and that allows then everything to be nice and balanced. Because what you're going to have in this area is you're going to have cycles of 10 years of dry, 10 years of wet, roughly. It's not always the case, but over the history of the greater Kruger, what they've learned is that every sort of 10-ish years, we go through a different cycle, the dry, wet, dry, wet. And the wet cycles means a big increase in numbers of grazers and browsers. And then as it starts to get drier, those numbers start to come down and predator numbers start to go up, because the prey animals like warthogs and buffalo and things get weaker, and so lions and leopards start to be able to feed better. And so their numbers go up, and then it starts to get wet, and the prey animals start to get stronger, and then the predator numbers start to go down, and so it follows each other around. So we don't feed them, because otherwise, like I say, we're going to mess with that balance, and things are going to go out of whack, and we're going to see too many of one animal, which could then lead to too little of another animal. And part of that is, if you look at the Kruger system, for a long time we had big water holes in the Kruger system. So if you go into parts of the Kruger National Park, they had huge dams all over, and those dams actually caused a big problem. So while it wasn't food, the amount of water in certain areas meant that zebra and wildebeest and elephants and buffalo were able to spread all over the Kruger National Park, and they were able to go into areas that normally they wouldn't have done very well in. And that meant that other species like rowan, eland, sable, those antelope suffered, because when these animals came in, the grass got much shorter, and those animals rely on quite long grass for their young ones to be born in, and it became very, very difficult for them to survive. And the competition with those antelopes meant that their numbers dropped. So what you're trying to get is a balance where antelope that prefer drier areas had a space to live, and antelope that prefer wetter areas had a space. And so now in Kruger, they've actually destroyed a lot of those dams. They've broken the walls so that water is no longer there, to try and get that balance back again, the one that we disturbed. So feeding animals would be doing the exact same thing. Hopefully that's a very long answer to your question, but hopefully you got the gist of it. Stefan, who's 6 years old. Stefan, the reason that they stick up their tails is purely to be able to see each other. Okay, so when you're sitting like this, you see that when their tails are down, if the grass is long, it can be quite difficult to see them. So what happens when they are running, let's say there's a predator and something like a leopard runs and chases them. As the mother or the lead warthog runs away, its tail will go up, and that means the babies or the other warthogs in the group can see that tail and they can follow it, and they know that following that is a safe route. Because if they see the tail and the tail is moving all the time, it means that animal is not caught, and therefore a good way to go. So it's basically called a follow me signal. Lions have a black tip to their tail, that's their follow me signal, and leopards white tip of their tail. But these guys stick it up because they're just so short that they need their tail to be visible above the grass for those that are following behind them. Okay, well, we're going to carry on. We're going to leave our three very relaxed little piggies to themselves. And while we go look for some other things out here, let's send you up to andBeyond Ngala with Eric. I'm sure he wants to say good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and a very, very warm welcome to all of the kids around. We have started off fantastically. I mean, my name is Eric, Owen behind camera over here, and the plan for the afternoon actually was to try and check this riverbed. When we were having breakfast this morning, we heard lots of monkeys alarm calling and one or two bushbuck calling, so we thought it must be a leopard. And so we came back down into the riverbed to see if we could potentially try and find this lioness, or try and find what predator it was, and it turned out to be this lioness that we have here. And so if you have a nice close look at her, I mean, the things that stand out most are those spots on her stomach, which stand out really well. Now that we zoomed in, just look underneath her, or just close to her back left leg over there, there's very wet and quite defined nipples that she's got. So this is that female that we've been seeing quite regularly, and she's moved quite far away from where we last know her cubs to have been. And so I think sometime throughout the evening or maybe late into the morning, she decided to move off and potentially try and find something to hunt. Maybe just spend some time away from the cubs, give herself some peace and quiet. She has been, for the last maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so, she has been picking up her head and looking around and scanning every now and again, but nothing too serious. Ronak, you're asking when lions sleep, and I mean this is the perfect time of day for them to be sleeping. So they tend to sleep a little bit like I was saying with leopards. They are a nocturnal species, so they tend to be active during the nighttime, and so they'll sleep and conserve energy from morning right up until the early evenings. And yeah, this is what she's doing. She's found a nice little spot. I'm sure the sand and the shade over there is nice and cold. There's a cool breeze flowing through this area. She's in some shade, and so she'll be happy just to rest and conserve energy for now. She probably realizes that her cubs aren't really under too much threat, especially at this time of day. And probably once it starts cooling down a little bit more, she'll get a little bit more active, and then that's when she'll start maybe moving back towards the cubs for the evening. And lions are notorious sleepers. They will sleep for, sometimes 15 to 20 hours in a day. And they do exactly this. Sometimes you'll find them in the same spot that they were in the morning, and they hadn't moved at all. Alexander, you're asking how fast they can run. And lions can move very, very quickly. And you can just imagine, there's so much power built in those back legs, built in those shoulders, and they can get to top speed of probably around about between 80 and 90 kilometers an hour. So that's probably somewhere around 45, 50 miles an hour, if I've done my calculations right. Probably not. But the thing with lions and pretty much all cats is they've only got a short amount of distance where they can run that fast. And so this lioness would rely a lot more on her camouflage than she would on her speed. So, the grass around her is a pretty good example. It's turning nice and gold. It's exactly the same color as the back of her. And so she'll creep up in that grass to try and get as close to animals as possible as she could. And then she'll use her explosive acceleration to try and catch up to the animals. And so she tends to probably rely a little bit more on her acceleration and her instant speed and a lot more longer lasting speed that she wouldn't be able to sustain for too long. Sometimes if lions get it right and they're hunting, they won't even need to reach their top speed. Sometimes they'll literally just be able to herd animals into each other. Liana, you are only 5 years old and you're wondering why lionesses or female lions do most of the hunting. And it's a good question. And these lionesses spend a lot of time hunting and providing food for their youngsters. But if there's males in the pride, they'll come in and reach and get the spoils of the meat that they've caught. The male lions will not do as much hunting as the females because they're much heavier. And so, this lioness would probably weigh somewhere in the region of 160, maybe 170 kilograms, somewhere around there, maybe 150. Male lions can weigh up to 200, 220 kilograms. So it's a lot heavier. It's a lot harder for them to run that fast. And sometimes they tend to hang back. They've got that very, very big full mane, which probably makes them a lot hotter. And probably maybe a little bit easier to see. So they're not as effective hunters as lionesses. Lionesses tend to hunt a lot more regularly because they're more skilled at it. It's easier for them to hunt. but then the females will tolerate the males because the males protect the youngsters of the females. And so they're not happy about it, but if a male comes in and tries to steal the carcass, then I guess that's just something that they'll accept. I just saw that her top or bottom jaw was moving up and down, almost like she was trying to speak. Look closely, you see, it looks like she's twitching, so probably in a very, very deep sleep. See, I don't know if it's a blade of grass or maybe a fly that's buzzing around them. I think it's a little blade of grass that's blowing in the wind, and maybe it's just, actually if you look at her nostril, there's a fly that's just about to land in the nostril itself. Oh, is it also the grass? Never mind. Not really a fly. Yes, it is a blade of grass. Sure. Matthew, who's in grade 3, has asked if a lion and a crocodile were to fight outside of the water, who would win? It's a very good question, and I don't know if it's been recorded all that often, but I would probably suspect if it was a small enough crocodile and the lions were hungry enough, the lions would probably have the upper hand. I mean, it's a tough one to think about, because I mean those crocodiles will always be around water, and as soon as they feel threatened, they'll run straight into the water. But sometimes if they get caught out, maybe if a female was moving towards a den site to lay her eggs and lions manage to kind of trap her and get between her and the water, they'll stand a chance of being able to kill a crocodile. But it would be a very high risk thing for them to do. Crocodiles have got massive rows of teeth on their top and their bottom jaws. They are incredibly strong, they're powerful. That tail, I guess, could be used as a weapon to slash and hit and try and defend themselves. And so if it's a big crocodile, it would be very tricky. I do know, I mean, I think within the Kruger National Park, I've only really heard of one lion killing a crocodile, but I'm sure it might happen a little bit more often. But as soon as you put the crocodile in the water, the tables turn. The crocodile would definitely have the upper hand, and 9 times out of 10, I'm sure the crocodile would win in a fight between a lion. So, this lioness, you can see, is in dreamland, sleeping a lot, not really moving around like when we first found her. So I think it might be worth potentially coming back here to see if she leads us back towards where her cubs have been kept. But in the meantime, we're probably going to leave her for now and head towards one of these nice big waterholes to see if there's anything to drink. So in the meantime, whilst we're making our way towards that waterhole, we'll send you across to Djuma to see what David's got.
Well, very cool about getting to see lions so early on in the drive. It's always a winner. Hopefully can manage to get some action there a little bit later. It sounds like it's a sleeping cat at the moment. Not too much news on this side. We are just taking a very slow drive here. It's very thick, in a very thick part of the reserve, lots of vegetation. I'm literally in first gear here, just idling along Buchanan, looking at all the trees, imagining what branches look comfortable for that which we seek. I'm going to spend a little bit more time here and then maybe head back down to the treehouse dam, see if we can maybe find those elephant that we had this morning. See how far they've moved. Megana, 8 years old. Thanks for your question and welcome to the show. You've asked how long does it take to find an animal after we've heard it call? Well, it can be very quick or it can take some time. It all depends on how far away it is, what animal it is. For instance, if we heard elephant trumpeting, then I reckon we'd probably find them in a few minutes because they'd be in the general vicinity, not too far, easier to find. Whereas if you hear a leopard giving its territorial call early in the morning or in the late afternoon, it's very difficult to find. It's difficult to know exactly where that call is coming from. You might get a general direction, but in thick bush like this, you would not be able to pinpoint it exactly just based on its call, unless you had a pretty good idea of where it was walking, because oftentimes leopard will use the same paths to mark their territories when they're giving their calls. So you can try and guess it, but oftentimes one is unsuccessful because they do move quite quickly. But very important to use our ears, not just our eyes out here. We have to use all of our senses to look for these animals. David, very good name. I like that name. My name's also David. You're 14 years old, from the States, and you've asked, with all this rain, will animals migrate through here or to this area? Now, the animals we have here are pretty fixed. They don't move very far. They don't migrate huge distances like you may be thinking of the wildebeest in East Africa and the big open plains that follow the rains. Here, animals pretty much stay put. Some years ago, 50 odd years ago, they used to move a lot more. Maybe a little bit longer, even 80 to 100 years ago. The bush here was a lot different. There was a lot more grass, a lot more open bush, and animals used to move. Big herds of bulk grazers like your wildebeest and your zebra used to move great distances, actually do a migration after the rain, following the rain, and then in the dry season back down to the rivers east and south of us, and then after the rains they'd come back to these regions. So that was more of a traditional migration that you may be thinking of, but unfortunately with human interactions, fences started going up and animals started losing those migratory routes, and as a result they were forced to stay in one place, and that changed the bush completely. Things like overgrazing happened, too much food getting eaten, and the bush changed, their numbers changed, and the whole dynamic of the bush changed to where we are today. Even though we don't have fences in this area anymore, animals are now pretty much set. They don't move too far. Well, we're going to carry on and go down to some water and see what we can find. In the meantime, let's send you over to Ngala and beyond with a very tall animal.
Tall animal indeed. We've actually got a few tall animals here. We just left that lioness and she's no more than maybe 200 or 300 meters behind us, and a whole journey and a whole group of giraffes started walking from one point in the river up onto the banks, and we're in a nice position here where we can see this one feeding. So we're looking up at them, and that's maybe why it looks so tall. But it is such a beautiful sight, and this one that it was that we just saw feeding, you see there's a little bit more of a silhouette of another one moving across. And so they wouldn't be too worried about that lioness. You know, if they see her starting to move and they identify her as just the one, you'll probably find that they'll be more cautious than completely fearful. And so they'll just sit and stand in one spot and just watch where she goes. You might even find that they could even try and follow her for a little bit before she moves on. And where they're heading, I mean, that lioness might hear them. She will probably pick up her head and just look to see what's coming her way, but very quickly she'll realize, I mean, it's a group of fully grown giraffe. There's absolutely no chance that she would have the experience or the strength to try and take down one herself. So, you know, she'll probably just let them casually walk past us. All right, so now that they've just disappeared, I'd like to just quickly show you our plan for the afternoon. So we left the tented camp and we drove the riverbed, and somewhere over here is where we saw that lioness, and then we up over here, that's where we saw that giraffe. And so we would still like to work in the eastern part of the reserve to try and figure out whether we can find a leopard that we think we might have seen tracks of this morning, and then we'll kind of maybe a little bit later on start heading down in this direction to see if that lioness has walked from here to here towards where her den site is. So we'll spend some time in this area and see if we have any luck before we head down towards that den site. So whilst we're driving, looking around for stuff, we'll send you across to Tristan, who's got another large animal.
We do have a large animal. We have a very sleepy baby large animal who's being bullied by its siblings at this stage. It's trying to have a little nap on the ground there, but the others keep standing on it and using their trunks to poke and prod and generally just irritate this poor little baby, who looked as though it was super comfy at one point. Isn't it cute though? Same little one. Now your sibling's bullying you. Neither of these will be the mother for that baby. The mother is close by. The herd is really quite spread out at the moment. They're all kind of just feeding and taking it easy. I think they've just finished drinking at Treehouse Dam and have then spent a bit of time here feeding and close to the water where they maybe will drink again just now. And that often gives the perfect opportunity for a tiny little baby like this to have a nap. You can imagine the herd moves a lot, and so those little legs get tired, and so sometimes... What are you doing, silly sausage? No. That's super cute. No, you can't lie there. That doesn't look comfortable at all. Its back leg is kind of pinned underneath its body. There we go, that's better. I don't know if there's maybe a little bit of water in there or damp soil, which is cooler, and maybe that's why they're trying to kind of go down into this little ditch, but I don't see any sort of wet soil on them. And there we go. Oh, that is cute. You're a silly little lily. It looks like a little boy who's being naughty. Like I say, I have no idea why they are so fascinated with this hole. It doesn't look like there is any water in it. I don't see any sign of mud on them. So, for some reason, they were intrigued by it and wanted to spend some time in it. Maybe it was just comfortable to lie in. And that's why that little one decided to lay there. And from here, they'll probably move off and the little one will try and find mom. So, through communication that we can't hear, they're going to be able to work out where their baby is and where mom is, and they'll then come together. So they use a very low frequency sound, and like I say, our ears are just not able to pick it up, but theirs will be, and they'll have a little communication or a little conversation as to say come this side or go that way, and then they're able to find one another. And that one's going to the toilet. Lovely. That's not very nice, little elephant. We don't want to see you going to the toilet. I'm going to just reposition quickly, Alex, just so we can get a slightly better view of these guys. Like I say, I think they've finished at the waterhole already. I don't think it's the same herd that Dave had this morning in this area. It might be, but then it would be very strange to me because generally these guys don't spend all day at the same waterhole. They normally go drink and then move off and go feed and then head in a direction maybe to the next waterhole. So I'd be very, very surprised if it is the same herd that's hung around here all day. But you never know. We'll have to look out for the female with the tusk that grows underneath her trunk. I believe that's the herd that Dave had this morning. Nice big herd. Oh, lots of affection this afternoon in this group. Ayash, who's 11 years old, the amount of water an elephant needs to drink per day is generally about 100 to 150 liters. Is about what they'll need depending on, how hot it is and various other things and how much moisture they're getting from the vegetation that they're eating. But that's normally about what they'll go for. 150 liters is about the average, particularly in the winter months. They don't need as much water as they would in the summer months. So yeah, it's a lot though. If you think about it, if you take a Coca-Cola bottle that is 2 liters and you work out how many that is, you've got to have 75 of those to be able to have enough for an elephant, which would be crazy. So it's a lot of water, and they'll do that pretty quickly. A lot of elephants, funny enough, could theoretically even go to a waterhole and get about 100 liters down pretty quickly. Each time they fill up that trunk, they're getting at about 8 liters a time. So it's only a few short slopes with the trunk, and they'll be able to get what they need. So yeah. But normally what you find is they split it up into 2 or 3 drinking sessions a day, where they'll drink in the morning, around midday, and then in the evening as well. So they kind of spread it out. They don't do it all at once for the most part, unless water is very, very, very scarce. If you go to somewhere like Botswana, into a place called Nine Pans, that area there is this big salt pan, and the bull elephants will walk the whole day to get to this waterhole, just to be able to get something to drink. It's a pumped waterhole, and sometimes they'll walk, like I say, from sunrise all the way to sunset to get there, drink, and then off they go again into the night to where they can find food, because the area around that waterhole, because it's a salt pan, there's very little food for elephants, and so they have to walk a long way just for the water and the salts that they get from that water and the minerals, and then all the way back to wherever they're feeding. And so they cover huge distance every day. These elephants in this part of the world are very, very lucky. There's so much water that they don't have to move big distances. They just can kind of drink here, and then a 15-minute walk and they can find another waterhole. So it's much easier for them. But some of those desert adapted or dry area elephants have it a lot harder. It's why those areas in the winter months, some of them can be so amazing because of the herds of elephants. If you go to Chobe up in northern Botswana in October, September, October, when it's at its driest, the elephant herds there can be 200-300 elephants coming down to a single spot to drink, with you easily able to see 500 elephants on a single kind of boat ride up the river, which is crazy. And that's all just because of how dry it gets there. And so the river really is the only source of water for many, many kilometers. Kruger, a little bit different. They don't have to worry as much, and therefore don't have to walk as much. So Layla, mom elephant is carrying her baby for a very, very long time. In humans, they carry their baby for 9 months. Okay, so only 9 months. These guys, they do it for 22 months. Now, 22 months is 2 months shy of 2 years. So Layla, mark today as a day, and imagine that today an elephant falls pregnant, and in 2 years' time is when that elephant basically is going to give birth. Can you imagine? So when you get to what would it be? What would the date be today? The 20th of May. So let's call it the 20th of March, 2022 would be roughly when that elephant would be able to give birth, which is crazy. It's a long, long, long time away. But the reason that their time that they carry their baby for is so long is because their baby's big when it's born. And this baby can weigh about 150 kilograms or 300 pounds at birth, and that means that it's got to take a long time to grow inside the mother. It's also a very complicated animal. It's got a trunk, it's got big ears, and those all have to form and develop, and so that takes quite a lot of time as well. So it's why 22 months is needed for these guys. What's super interesting though is with elephants it's very long, and rhinos too. Rhinos are 15 months for black and 16 for white. But hippos, which are very similar size to rhinos, their gestation period is half of that. So their gestation period is actually shorter than us as a human, even though their baby is slightly bigger than what ours is when we give birth. The reason they can give birth to a smaller baby, less developed baby, is because they have far less predators in the water. So yes, there's crocodiles, but generally the pod can keep those crocodiles at bay and keep them away. But if they go onto land, they only go a little bit onto land, whereas something like a rhino or an elephant, they have to deal with lions and leopards and hyenas and wild dogs. So their babies need to be bigger and stronger, and that's why they stay in their mother for so much longer. Right, so unfortunately it's that time of the day where we need to end our kids section for the drive. It's now time for all of you to get involved, and so it's a very warm welcome to all the adults that are joining us at this time of the day. Remember that we would want to hear from you guys too, so you guys can use hashtag WildEarth or @FC on all the YouTube chat streams, and we'll answer your questions. But hopefully the kids had a nice elephant sighting and learned something today. It's always good to have kids on board. I think it's one of the more important things that we do, is to have children involved in watching this, because ultimately they're the next generation for us. Bella, you're 10 years old and you're asking me what my favorite part of the elephant is. This is a tricky one, Bella, because I like the fact that they have trunks, and the trunks represent, just the science behind how that trunk works and how they're able to feed and how they use it to drink and smell and all those kinds of things, and that it's quite funny to watch them with their trunks and what they do. So that would be up there, but I think my favorite part of an elephant is the tusks. And I'll tell you why. The tusks, for me, one, are a symbol of the power of an elephant. I don't know why those tusks always just, you see tusks of an elephant and there's something about that makes you admire them, particularly ones with really big tusks. But the other thing about them is that those tusks, when you look at them closely, and so if you ever get close to an elephant and you're able to see those tusks have little scratches and scrapes and stains and marks on them, and they're places where they've been worn by this elephant using it. And so that tusk has all these stories to tell, and all this kind of, all these little things about them that make them intriguing. And it's like each little nick and the scratch on that tusk represents a story of this elephant's life. And so that's why I like the tusks. And I think elephants that don't have tusks just look very different. It's not that there's anything wrong with them, and they certainly doesn't take away from them, but it's just the tusks for me is what makes an elephant. I don't know, elephant is an elephant because of these tusks in my mind. And like I say, I just like the stories that those tusks tell. But yeah, the trunk would be a very close second, I think. I like the trunks as well. Very expressive with their trunks, that's for sure. This elephant's doing its best to hide away at this stage. Okay, I think probably what we're going to do is maybe move on, because these ellies aren't really in a great spot, and it gets quite thick in here, and I don't want to go bashing after them. And so while I carry on and go and see what else I can find, apparently David is bumbling around and basking in the sun, so let's send you across to him.
Well, we just stopped here at a little area with some groundwater still. Last of the groundwater. Won't be here much longer, but while it's here, it's still attracting animals. We're not too far from where those elephants are, actually, with Tristan. Just up the road a bit. We haven't seen much here though, except a couple squirrels. And this beautiful big tree next to us. It's a big old jackalberry tree. And it seems to be growing on a termite mound, which makes you wonder which one came first, the tree or the termite mound. But a very old tree indeed. Looks like its whole left half is broken and rotting. Perhaps lightning struck this tree once upon a time, killing that left side of it. Leslie, you've asked, do we put out salt licks for the animals? And we don't. We don't feed them or supplement their diet in any way out here. That is common practice in some intensive game breeding areas, but out here in the wilds we don't do anything like that. Although I'm sure they would enjoy it, but we have a completely hands-off approach where we just let everything survive and let nature take its course as it will. Very peaceful here with the turtle dove in the background. Interesting, these pans are actually growing and getting deeper and deeper. A few years ago they wouldn't have been this deep. But every time an animal comes and walks through here, buffalo or elephant, they take a bit of mud away with them. And over the years and over the rainy seasons, these pans just get bigger and bigger, eventually connect to each other, and eventually form a dam. Do you hear those birds? Maybe they'll call again. Those are oxpeckers. You can hear it. I don't think you're going to see them. They just landed in this jackalberry next to us. I can't see them. I think it's right at the top, BK.
I can see it, but I
Maybe
doubt
I'll
I'll be able to see it with a cat.
Generally indicative of large mammals in the area, because these birds require mammals to survive. They survive with ticks and parasites, so you'll often see them with rhino and buffalo, but also impala and smaller animals. But whenever you hear them, or when you see them fly overhead and dive bomb behind a tree somewhere, it's always worth checking out what's there, because they can be a very good indicator. Luke, you reckon these oxpeckers sound cute? I don't know, I think I'm going to disagree with you there. I think they sound a little bit harsh. Very raspy. But everyone's got a different ear. They are being very vocal, as they generally are. Well, let's take a little bit of a drive. Maybe we see something that these oxpeckers have been feeding on. I think we're going to slowly make our way towards Buffelshoek Dam. I don't think anyone's been there yet today. go see who's around. It's a very lacquer afternoon, very nice temperature. Not too hot, not too chilly. Well, I'll make my way. Why don't we send you back over to Ngala and see what they have to say.
We have left the lions and the giraffe, but we're now basically on the banks of the river, driving back in an easterly direction before we turn towards that nice big water hole. And I thought it might be worth just coming back to investigate the alarm calls we heard a little bit earlier on whilst we were having breakfast this morning. And on the road we do have tracks of a leopard, but they don't look particularly fresh. I think they could have been from maybe yesterday or potentially the day before, just because there's been lots of animal activity on top of the tracks. But I did manage to see one front foot, and the left hand foot is slightly out, and the three toes are almost in a perfect straight line, which is a little bit unusual. It makes it quite easy for us to identify this track, and if I were a betting man, I'd probably say that it's a young male leopard that we find in this area who was walking past here, and he moves around very sporadically. Sometimes he covers huge distances, sometimes he doesn't move at all, and so that's why I've just decided to slow my pace right down. I don't know if you can see, but we are moving just at a very, very slow pace, and I'm just checking any shady bush. I'm checking up in the trees, on the road, just to see if this leopard was in the area. If not, if we don't find any fresh tracks or signs, we can probably say that those alarm calls that we heard were more than likely from that lioness, but it's worth a double check just to see if anything's around here. And it's incredibly thick, this part of the reserve. I mean, you can just see bushes on either side go past the vehicle. The grass goes right up to where the bushes starts. Just a quick little look there so you can see. And if this leopard wanted to hide in the grass, it literally would have to just disappear less than a meter off of the road and we would not see it. So we need a little bit of luck if he is around. I'm checking up the trees to see if there's any carcass or maybe him lying down to try and catch some afternoon breeze. I mean, we've started the afternoon off with lions and giraffe and elephants. So this leopard would be a little cherry on top of the cake. I'm not too worried if we don't find him at the end of the afternoon. I mean, it's very, very grassy here on the road, so I'm actually not able to see tracks. So I will just increase the speed a little bit more, just so we can cover some distance. And then once we turn around the corner, we'll eventually get to a point where we drove a road this morning, and so we'll know exactly how old those tire tracks are. And if the lions, if that leopard was moving, we'll be able to see it. So Sarah, you're asking how endangered leopards are. And out of the three big cats that we get in Africa, the lion, the leopard and the cheetah, I would say leopards are the least concerned. They still are vulnerable, but they've probably got a much higher number than cheetahs and lions. And the reason being is they are so adaptable. And so, Sarah, they can occur in lush, dense vegetation like we're driving through here. They can occur in tropical rainforests. They can occur in deserts. And because they're a slightly smaller cat than a lion and they're by themselves, it allows them to move a lot. And so they can cross out of reserves. They can live out of protected areas. You sometimes see them in the middle of cities. I know in India, they have been recorded moving through cities at the darkest hours of the night. We've seen them here in a town called Nelspruit. There's been footage of them literally walking down the main street of the town. So they are very adaptable, and I guess they can occur pretty much wherever they feel fit. So right the way from the east of Asia all the way down into Africa, they tend to occur, whereas lions and cheetahs tend to be a little bit more habitat specific. So whilst we're driving on the road that I drove before a little bit earlier, looking for tracks of these lions, we'll send you back to Djuma and see how their afternoon is going.
Good luck, Eric. Hopefully those lion tracks appear and you get to find them. We had lion tracks on Djuma this morning, but they came in and out. It's such a weird loop that they walked. They walked straight up Twin Dams Road, took Pangolin track, and then went straight back south again. Very odd. I wonder if maybe they weren't following some buffalo. I saw some buffalo tracks that went towards Treehouse Dam. Maybe they went further south towards Little Gowrie, and that's why the lions kind of turned like that one, because once they hit the buffalo tracks, it looks like they turn a little bit and head southwards. So not sure, but I think it was the two evokers by the looks of things. There's definitely two of them, and I don't think the Nkuhumas would walk like that. So the evokers, funnily enough, don't have very big feet. Their tracks are actually quite small in comparison to the Birminghams and the Matimbas. The Matimbas definitely had the biggest feet by a long way, and then the Birminghams, also the Mapokos. The Mapokos had big feet as well, and some of the Majingilans. It depends which Majingilan you tracked, but one or two of the Majingilans also had nice big feet compared to our evokers. Our poor evokers have little dainty feet. Which is not ideal for them. Makes them get confused with females often. It's been really interesting listening to the radio sometimes, knowing that the two of them are around, and then guys calling in Lioness tracks, and you know full well that they're there for the two boys. The one is slightly larger. If you look closer, you can see he has quite a large set. Okay, come on, Thandi. Where are you, girl? Now, sorry, Lindek, if you can just repeat the name. I got the rest of the message. It's just the name is what I need. Please. Kyle. Apparently, it is your birthday. And so, from all of us, it is a very, very, very happy birthday to you. I hope that you have the most wonderful day today. Kyle, what would you like to see? What requests do you have on your birthday that we can try and fulfill? Within reason, Kyle, because if you say Hosanna, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you, and I don't want to disappoint you on your birthday. I want you to be very happy on your birthday and for us to realize your dream sighting. So throw it out there. I suppose you can go for whatever you want. It's your birthday, why not? Let's even go for the beyond ridiculous sightings and see what we get. Yeah, exactly. Be careful. You're right, Landeka. But Carl, in all honesty, I hope you have a lovely day. I hope you get spoiled wherever you are. And I hope that if you like the sun to shine, that the sun is shining. Or if you want it to be a cold, miserable day where you can just be at home during this lockdown and be happy, then I hope it's that. So whichever it may be, I hope that it's a good one. It's always nice when it's people's birthdays. I like birthdays. Birthdays are jovial and fun. I don't like my own birthday because it makes me feel like I'm getting old, but I like other people's birthdays. I feel like celebrating other people's birthdays is fun. Gremlins General. Firstly, I'm wondering where you live, or where you think that we live. That if we were walking down a city street and you came across a leopard, what would we do? Do you live near a safari park or something that you're worried about a leopard escaping and just walking down a city street? I can assure you that of all the animals, the leopard would probably be not the ones to be walking down city streets. They're not going to be too chuffed to be in a city. But let's hypothetically say a leopard got into a city and was walking down the street. What should you do? Well, you should definitely not go and cuddle said leopard. Leave said leopard well alone. You just pretend like you haven't seen it, and you walk past it and you go away from it as quick as possible, is my best advice. when we walk into leopards here in the bush, generally what you try and do is not make any eye contact, and you try and almost pretend like you haven't seen it and just kind of walk as though it's not there. Depending which leopard you're talking about. If it was Hosanna, it wasn't a problem. You could stop and look at him, and he would just look at you with his big eyes and wonder what you're doing there. Same as his sister, Shungile. No, we're going to have to put somebody in a leopard onesie and walk them down the streets of Johannesburg. It's like that advert that was shot with the lion walking down the streets of Johannesburg that everyone thought was a real thing, where people thought a lion had escaped and was just walking and roaming around. It's not the case. The lions and leopards won't be just walking around the streets. They'll try and avoid people as much as possible, especially in city areas. They'll be so petrified of all the noise that they won't want to go anywhere near there. But yeah, if you did come across it, generally what you try and do is either try and get into some sort of cover, try and get into a place that's potentially you can hide from it and wait for it to move away, or to just try and pretend like you kind of haven't seen it and slowly back away from it and try and increase the distance. But like I said, the likelihood of you ever walking into one in the streets of a city is almost zero. Of a big city, let me say. In a small city, different. Small cities, it's possible. But big cities, no. All right, we're going to just check here quickly, see if there's any sign for Thandi, see if she's been milling around this area. I think I just saw a track. So while I investigate that, let's send you across to David, who's on his own adventure this afternoon.
Oh, it'd be so cool to get a visual of Thandi, wouldn't it? I've heard lots about her cubs. That'd be really cool if we get that visual this afternoon. Wish Tristan all the best. BK and I are just slowly cruising on the way to the Vilshoek Dam on this very picturesque road full of marulas. Speaking of marulas, I'm just wanting to check if this one has been completely ring barked or if there's a little bit of bark left to survive. Looks like it'll be okay. If you zoom in on it there, you'll see it's got a strip of bark left. From the roadside, it looks like it's been completely munched away. As you know, a hungry elephant can strip that bark very quickly. 5 minutes and a 30-year-old tree is done for, if they are to ring bark it all the way around. But they left a little bit of bark on this one, so hopefully it survives. That one in front of us looks like it's maybe been completely ring barked. In which case there will be no way for the tree to transfer nutrients from leaves to roots. The inner bark, the inner cambium, is that passageway, and without it the tree won't survive. Especially these Marula trees are very susceptible to pests and insects. Once they have lost their bark is a protective skin, and these softer woods like Marula will become susceptible. So all around, no good for the tree to lose its bark. I'm gonna carry on the way. Yeah, this is a very picturesque drive. I love this road. Nice and windy with massive Marula trees on the sides. Laura, you've asked, during the rainy season, are there ever any issues with floods? And most certainly we do get floods, a proper flood every decade or so. Well, our last flood was 2012, I think was our last big one. Yeah. We had more than our annual rainfall in like a couple days. And of course, all the rivers came down, dams broke, roads were flooded. It was a lot of water. They're completely stranded out here. There's always a river that you got to cross to get somewhere. When it floods like that, there's no going anywhere. Lodges washed away, camps washed away. A friend of mine had his whole house washed away. He got airlifted out. Him and his family and dog had to climb a tree, and they got airlifted out by helicopter. Just seeing what tracks those are on the ground. I think I've driven over them. Luke, you've asked, can animals track footprints or paw prints? It's an interesting question. I've wondered that myself quite a bit. I don't think they track visually like we do. I think they are more on the scent basis. Obviously, wherever animals step will leave a scent marking. So I don't think they really... I think the only visual is when they're actually looking for movement or using their eyes, but on the footprint basis, I don't think they actually look at tracks like we do. And you see down here on the ground, BK, it's pretty cool. There's lion going one way and leopard going the other way. It's going to be a little bit tough. There you go.
You're on Jackal.
Let me go and point it out for you. Unplug quickly. There's the leopard. And you see that, BK? And on that side, it's going to be a little bit tough to see. It's been gone over by Impala and whatnot. It's not very fresh. There's a lion going the other way. It's kind of cool to see leopard and lion right next to each other. Nice to see the scale difference. Not sure what lion these would be. Looks like there was some lion activity around here last night though. We saw... There you go, BK, you got that track. We both saw tracks, Tristan and I, today, moving through the property. Well, they are heading the way that we're heading, so let's see. See, these tracks aren't terribly fresh, probably last night. You can already see there's a lot of other activity around and over it, and doves have walked over the tracks. So it's been a good full day of other species moving over these tracks. Just gives you a little bit of a timeline. But who knows how far they walked. They could have just carried on and plopped down just up the road. Looks like a couple different individuals. You see there's tracks on both sides of the road. I'm just going to follow up a little bit more on this, see what's happening. While we do that, let's send you back over to Ngala with Hippo.
Yeah, So we just got to this waterhole that we said we were going to come and have a look at. It's been such a nice warm day, so we were expecting some animals to come and have something to drink at this time. And we actually, oh, there are elephants here. That's really nice. Okay, we'll try and get into a good position. But what we saw was a hippo out of the water, which is a bit unusual. Not so much at this time of year, and I think it's just because the water gets cold. They like to come out and sunbathe themselves. And we're now in a spot where we can see the elephants and the hippos. So that hippo, I mean, they're so nervous when during the daytime, if they see any potential threat that they're not really happy with, they'll run straight into the water. So we got a brief view of it running into the water. Now it's settled back in the water there. But this elephant looks really nice, and just look at how the light is shining off of those tusks. It's got quite a dark body, so I just want to look through my binoculars to make sure. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, it's completely dark. Those tusks are nice and clean. There's another elephant moving in the background there. I'm sure he would have gone for a little afternoon dip, so we've probably just missed him swimming. Seems like there's another one. And look at their tusks, both similar in size. Gabrielle, are you asking if elephants harm animals, other animals? Usually not, but they can. And the most times I've seen elephants standing up towards animals is when there's a lack of water. And when an elephant comes down to drink, it being the biggest, most powerful animal, it kind of expects another animal to move out of the way. If another animal doesn't, then it will unfortunately try and confront it. And so, I mean, I've seen it myself. I've seen an elephant and a rhino facing off with one another. And the rhino stood its ground. It was a young elephant bull, so he was inexperienced, and luckily the elephant, after a big temper tantrum, didn't do too much to the rhino. But it is something that happens quite often. I know that elephants have killed rhinos because of the lack of water potentially. And sometimes they might even chase and try and get hippos away from a waterhole. But in an area like this, where this waterhole is nice and full, you don't typically see elephants bothering other animals too much. I mean, if it was a predator like a lion or a leopard, you would probably find that the elephants would trumpet and chase them away. But because the lions know that they've got no chance standing up to elephants, they tend to run away and avoid confrontation as much as they can. I love when we see the back of an elephant. I just love the loose skin behind its ears as it flaps over. Yaki, you're asking how can hippos eat so much less than elephants? And I mean, just off the top of my head, my first thought is just the size. So I mean, a big elephant bull like this one would potentially weigh in the region of 4.5 tons, and they can grow once he gets a little bit older, maybe to 5.5, 6.5 tons. Whereas a hippo, a big male, might weigh up to 2,000 kilograms, so 2 tons. And so if you've got a smaller body, you'll eat less. I mean, what I've read before is that a single elephant bull, he'll be able to eat in excess of 200 to 300 kilograms of food in a daytime, whereas a hippo, a big male, might eat about 60 kilograms of grass. And so it's actually not too much less if you look at the weight ratio between an elephant and a hippo. There's a few there. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hippos. And that elephant is now just facing away from us, and it looks like he's feeding around this waterhole, so he's not in any rush. I'm trying to see where the other one went to, and it moved away to the left. I think I can just see it disappearing. So I wouldn't be surprised after a number of minutes if that elephant decided to get up and walk and follow the other elephant. sorry, I didn't. Do you get the question there? Oh, Sash, you're asking at what age do elephants get their tusks? And you'll probably start seeing them at around about 2 years old. Those tiny little tusks will start growing out. And yeah, so it's usually between 2, maybe 2.5 years old. This big elephant bull now, I mean, he's a youngster. We haven't really had a good look at his face, but he's got some nice tusks on him, and those tusks will just keep growing and growing throughout their lifetime. And within this area, we sometimes get a tusker, and the tusk is classified by the length of its tusks. And sometimes these elephant bulls these tusks get so big that their tusks will literally scrape along the ground as they're walking. And that will be literally 2.5, 3 meter long tusks, weighing sometimes 70 to 80. Ooh, this elephant might be coming to swim, or he's at least walking towards the water to have a drink. See, there's a heron in the foreground of that elephant. Let me see what he's up to. Looks like he's looking for something to drink. He might be going down. It's a lot deeper than I thought there. I mean, he had to cross that channel. There's a little island that he's standing on, and so probably but that went all the way down to the top of his knees. A lot deeper than I expected. Oh. Such a beautiful scene. Nice still water, not too much wind, sun on our backs, watching elephants moving around the waterholes. Really quite a special sight. So, I mean, I mentioned that other elephant bull is starting to move on. This bull probably is just trying to catch up to him, and that's why he's also moving off. So it sounds like Tristan has also found elephants. This time it's a little bit more than just 2. Let's see how many elephants he has. We'll send you across to him.
Well, as you can see, we've got a cheeky young male elephant that's giving us all kinds of nonsense at this moment in time, trying to impress everybody and make himself look very large. You can see the dust cloud from where he came towards us. He was very far away. And then when we arrived, and there was a trumpet, and then he came walking here with lots of attitude, as though we had done something wrong by driving down the road. Our poor tree is going to get the wrath of this very big, very strong elephant. Mister? I don't think so. So what you'll see is he'll go behind the tree, and he'll break branches and things like that, and you'll hear it, but what this is what's called displacement behavior. Displacement behavior is when these guys pretend like they're eating and pretend like they are busy with something else, but actually what he's doing is sitting behind there watching us, and he's almost showing off a little bit. He's trying to show us he can break branches, and if we move, then he can kind of judge what we do and then react to it. So often see it with bull elephants, is they do this. They'll come up to you and they'll do their little funny displays that they do, particularly young bulls, and they pretend like they're eating, especially behind bushes, but meanwhile they just watch you carefully to see what you get up to. And if you do something that they don't like, then they come and impress upon you that they're big. And if I were to probably drive forward now, I'm pretty sure that he might come behind us and pretend like he's chasing us, just to make himself feel better for the fact that we didn't move away 2 minutes ago. Look, no, fortunately not. That's why he left me alone. He thought I was somebody else. It's because my hair has grown so much, so he thought I was Brent, one of our old guides, and Brent owes him money apparently. So once he saw it wasn't Brent, then he left me alone and went off behind the bush. But yeah, it was quite nice to be sprayed by him as well, because he'd obviously been just drinking water, and so we got a whole bunch of droplets all over us as well. He was being naughty, as they often are. It'd be nice if he didn't feed on the other side of the bush, though. Man, it is awesome behavior. It's nice to watch it. Something that's difficult to describe to people without being able to actually show it physically. It's a pity that it's against the light completely at the moment. It's really not ideal that he went that side. If he had come to the right, it would have been much easier to kind of see him. But you can just see behind there that he's not really actually feeding. While it sounds like he's... Oh, bless you. That has got to be one of the biggest passings of gas I've seen from an elephant in a while. Boy, your tummy doesn't sound good at all. I think you've got a bit of a problem. I wonder if he's not been eating too many torchwood fruits, and that's why it sounds as though he could be in need of a toilet fairly soon. That was quite something. Generally, it's not as prolonged as that when they pass wind, but this particular fella clearly had a bit of a build-up there. Well, I'm not really sure what else to say about that, to be honest with you. Other than, I actually have nothing to say to add. I think he's done it all. Alex, I'm going to try to go forward a little bit just to see if we can get a slightly better view. Kathy in Ohio, you say, bless you. Yes, quite. Hey, mister, is that why you hid behind the tree? Were you embarrassed about what you were about to do? Did we interrupt your toilet time? He does not look impressed by the fact that I've now come round. Silly boy. So you see how he's kind of half-heartedly eating this. He's not really doing it properly. I mean, he's pretending to kind of eat. There's leaves pretty much more falling on the ground than actually going in his mouth. And that just gives him a chance to watch us. So he's actually not concentrating. That's why he's missing his mouth with those leaves. Once he starts to settle down a bit and realizes we're not trying to do anything to him, then he can actually start breaking them properly and eating properly. There we go. That's a bit better. And he'll kind of get the job done a lot better than what he was doing earlier. Cal 6, well, I'm glad that you think Ellie farting is a magical sound in nature. Certainly one that is, speaks for itself, that's for sure. There's not much to be said about it, actually. Are you going to come and be full of nonsense again, or are you going to behave yourself now? We're going to behave. That's good. He should be embarrassed on Diker. That was quite something. So he should be very embarrassed about his behavior. To get everybody in the world to listen to him doing what he's just done, that should embarrass him a lot. I don't think he actually cares, to be honest with you. He's probably one of those delinquent teenagers that thinks it's very funny to do this. And so, yes. Interestingly enough, though, those tracks that David had for that female leopard is the same track that I picked up just when you linked away from us last time. Sorry, I was just thinking about it. And it comes right from where the den site where James first found the cubs, and the den site that she uses quite a lot. And so I want to actually just go and check that den site. You never know. Maybe Tundi is kind of brought her cubs back without us knowing. So it's worth just going to go have a quick squiz in there and a quick check, just to make sure that she hasn't. I don't know when the last time somebody drove here was, but those tracks look like they're from yesterday, not today. But you never know. Maybe the cubs are here and she just went off hunting or something like that. So we'll have a little look. But the Ellies will keep us entertained for a little bit before we actually go around and check that den. Nice to just hear him feeding, though, as well. Now, If you guys found this particular sighting quite entertaining and you enjoyed our Ellie's magical natural sounds, it would be very wonderful if you would support us going forward so that we can continue to bring some comedic moments from the African wilderness into your lounges every day. And you can just go to the link below, and it would be most appreciated, that's for sure. Ellie? Was that your plan all along? It just looks naughty, this elephant. I don't know why. Some elephants just have a way about them that looks as though they're up to no good. And he looks like one of those. He looks like he's plotting and thinking about what he's going to do in order to raise havoc. So we'll sit with him for a little bit and see what he gets up to. In the meantime, it sounds like, all right, now he's going to come towards us and cause trouble, aren't you? See, I told you. No, don't throw stumps at me now. That's not going to be nice. Look how hairy his trunk is. He's got long hairs on his trunk. Naughty boy. Now, it's important with these young bulls like this, when they're naughty and they want to impose their size on you. Yes, you're very large. I can see that. No, I don't want your spit on me. Please don't throw it on me. Yes. Now, I was going to say, it's important when you have Ellies of this size that display and behave like this, that you don't back down. Young bulls like this are full of testosterone that's starting to flood their bodies, and they're trying to basically assert themselves. Now, if I keep driving away from him every time he does that, in his mind, he's learning that he can chase me and he can put his will on me every time. And as he gets older and bigger, that becomes more and more dangerous, and he can become more of a handful that way. So it's when you get young bulls like this, as much as it might look scary and it might look as though he's being all big and strong, he's actually being a little bit of a coward, because if I stand my ground, you can see immediately he backs off. He doesn't actually know what to do. He's so used to having the size that he has, chasing impalas and things like that. And so when we stand our ground, it's very unsure for him. He doesn't know what he's doing, and so then he'll go back to the rest of the herd and try and kind of figure it out. If we were to keep moving, then, like I say, he starts to get that impression that he can push you around, and when you don't, then he'll start to get more and more aggressive, because he'll almost be like as way of you kind of challenging him. But if you do it from a younger age, he learns straight away that we're not going to back down to him, but we're also not going to hurt him or push him around. And so it's important just to sit still like we have, wait for him to move off. Once he's moved off, he'll be relaxed. He'll know that we're not chasing him and not challenging him, and at the same time, we're not going to be bullied by him. So there we go. Ellie tip for the day. I feel like we should do a whole thing on how to approach elephants. I feel like there's a lot of people, I often see it when I go to the national parks and see how people are around elephants, and sometimes I cringe heavily because the behavior around them is horrendous, to be honest, and it surprises me that not more people don't get flattened by these guys. Anyway, we're going to carry on down. We'll go and see what else we can find. There's more of the herd, sounds like, down below. And so while I go look for them, let's send you across to David, who's got Ellies of his own.
Welcome back. Look who we've managed to catch up with. It's our elephant herd from this morning that BK and I spent so much lovely time with at the dam. And when that cow that you were just looking at turns around, you'll recognize those funky tusks of hers, those crooked ones. That's the only way I knew that this was the same herd. Because we can't see that many more, just a few youngsters here on the side. Looks like today is going to be an elephant day for us. Here you go, BK. She's showing you her crooked teeths. You guys remember this cow from this morning? We were looking at those cricket tusks. Now of course she's right behind the bush. Often find a one-tusked female, or male even, or no tusks. It's unusual to find such crooked tusks. I'll reverse 2 meters so we can. So we can see. There we go. I wonder how uncomfortable that is. You can see it's been worn smooth from a trunk, that left tusk. All the extra wear that it gets. She doesn't seem too bothered at all. Abhishek, you've asked an interesting question. Do elephants see colour? I'm not 100% sure. I would imagine that they do. I know research into animals seeing colour has to do with counting the rods and cones in the eye, and I'm not too sure what the verdict is on elephant. I know a lot of predators, they say, are just more in black and white. And then a lot of debate over birds. Some people saying they also see in a grey scale, but the other group saying it doesn't really make sense. Why would they be so brightly coloured if they couldn't see colour? I tend to think the elephant could probably see a bit of colour. How much colour, I'm not sure. Colour in itself is an interesting thing to think about, because we may all experience colour a little bit differently. If I've been told that that elephant is grey, and BK has been told that it's grey, perhaps our greys are different. Perhaps from a young age we've all seen slightly different spectrums of colours. That we call a red and a green, what we think is a green. Probably thinking too much about it. Anyway, my point is, how do you prove that my green is the same as BK's green? Well, there's a very big elephant just in front of us. I'll go a little bit forward and check it out. But in the meantime, let's send you back over to Tristan, who's now got the elephant on the smaller scale.
We do. We have quite a few on a smaller scale, but I actually think that David's with the same herd of elephants. It's just a very large herd, and it's spreading through the block, because I saw David on the cut line, and we're not actually that far from cheetah cut line. And I think when I was listening just now, I thought I could hear his car to the north of us. So I think he's on the northern side of this block with some other elephants, and we're obviously with these ones that are here. So it seems like quite a nice big grouping. You hear the trumpet. What's wrong, Ellie? A very, very upset elephant. I wonder what it's chasing. Hear them talking now. Isn't that cool? I want you to listen very carefully for them sucking water out the holes that they've dug. Aaron, you're asking what are some of the dangers to elephants. Here comes our trumpety elephant. And now, what's wrong? So, Aaron, in terms of dangers, it would be lions first and foremost, but hyenas when they're young, even recorded cases of leopards. Yes, you are very big and very strong, but what's made you so angry? I just want you to listen, because as this elephant approaches, we might get quite a bit of communicating between them. Sometimes when you get one approaching a grouping like this, there's low grumbles as they talk to each other and just kind of figure out who is who. What is going on, little one? Very annoyed by something. I wonder if it maybe just felt like it was lost. I was just trying to work out where the rest of the herd was. Now, normally when they trumpet like that, it's something that has upset them. Now, it could be something as small as a francolin that ran very close to them. It could be something like a lion or a leopard or a wild dog on the extreme scale. Could even be something like a mongoose that's run past them. But that elephant was trumpeting quite a lot from quite a long way away, and so something has spooked it. It could also be that there's a big bull within this grouping. When you get large herds of elephants, you sometimes get big bulls, and they can often be a bit of a handful. Mary J, not maybe, most definitely a bit of attention seeking from that one. It's calmed right down now that it's joined the slot, but maybe a bit of moment of panic, like a kid that feels like it's lost in a supermarket, which just starts shouting and screaming. Maybe it's the same thing. I mean, ultimately it's a young Ellie that. It's only a young teenager, and so might have felt a little bit vulnerable, and that's why it came trumpeting this way, to try and join up with everybody else. But what I want you to watch for is just there's this most beautiful side light that's coming in now, and every now and then they're throwing water, and there's these kind of golden droplets that are just flying up in front of them. It's really, really pretty when they do it. There you go. See that? Isn't that cool? Now, obviously, it's not great because it's very thick. It would be nice if it was a little bit more open, but it's just cool to see those droplets coming out. And what they're doing when they're doing that is they're sucking up water from these holes. And when they're sucking up the water, because it's little sandy places that they've dug, there's often a lot of sand that is caught up in there. And so they're throwing out the sand and getting rid of the dirty water, and then they're going to drink the nice clean water. Sometimes what you'll see is that they'll suck up, and then they'll squirt some of the water into their trunk. But where the trunk bends when they're drinking, because of the particles of soil being so heavy, they actually sink into that little bend. And so the last little bit of water, you'll see they'll drop their trunk, and the water will, that kind of sand and slush will just drop to the ground, and they won't drink that. It's a pretty cool thing to watch how sophisticated they are when they're drinking. Come on, grab some nice sand and throw it on yourself. We want to see that nice dust. Oh, so magic. Sightings like this are just so incredibly cool. Oh, look at the little baby. Has it been a long day, little one? Oh, that is cute. Don't think it's very comfortable. It's trying to get itself into a little comfy spot. And you say, oh, so little. It is a little one. It's probably about 4 years old. Generally, when you start to see those little tusks emerging, it's around a 4-year-old elephant. It's generally when they start to be seen. But It's certainly having her own little game there. Trying to find a little comfy spot for its head. It's like when you get into bed sometimes and your pillow just doesn't feel right. I think that's what's going on here at the moment. Is that not super cute though? Look at the two little ones trying to get the water. But you see how the female is pushing the one little baby away but not the other one. I wonder if the one is hers and the other one isn't. And so she's pushing the other one away to allow space for her little one to come and drink. You see, look how that little one is squeezing the other one away. See that? Nope, you're not allowed water. I'm going to put my bum in your face and push you away with my bottom. Now this poor one is out on its own. How beautiful is that though? It really is nice to see these guys. Obviously, like I say, it would be nice if it was a little bit more open, but it is super pretty. Just down in this drainage, like I say, you've got a bit of this kind of side light. It's still quite nice and green. It's like all the things that you kind of want on a soft winter light afternoon. The only thing that would be better is like if it was a bit open and we were lower down. And another little trick for those of you that are into photography, and particularly when photographing wildlife, if you guys go into the Kruger and places like that, always better if you're photographing wildlife from lower. It makes the animal more impressive. When you shoot from down, the angle that you shoot, or from higher, the angle that you create almost makes the animal smaller in a way, so it kind of looks like you're looking down on the animal. But when you're lower, it gives you a much more intimate look. And same with video work is you know, if you lower down, it almost feels like you're on the same level as that animal, and therefore gives you a much better appreciation of their size. It also, a lot of the time, helps with backgrounds. If you shoot like this and you've got an angle to your thing, the background will be much closer and therefore less depth of field. When you shoot from lower down, your background extends a little bit further back, and so you have a much softer image that will come out of it. It's obviously not always possible where you can't kind of position yourself. We're very lucky here that we can off-road and do things. But where you can, it's always good to try and get as low as possible to photograph or video wildlife, particularly elephants. If you can get sort of your foot level for elephants, it really does make them look incredibly impressive. Bob, not very often do the big ellies accidentally step on the little ones. Sometimes you'll find they step on their trunks, or they kind of by mistake knock them a little bit, and that's generally if there's some sort of commotion in the herd. So if maybe a big bull elephant's coming in and it separates the whole herd, then sometimes you'll get that. Or if there's, you know, a predator, like let's say wild dogs, that might cause elephants to spread apart or to suddenly move, and they might knock their little ones. But generally they're quite careful around their babies. They know where each other is, and they're generally quite good about just sort of stepping in the right areas and not squashing each other. Is there a bird of prey around? All the birds are starting to go funny now as well. They're all starting to call. Don't know if you guys can hear it. We've got Franklin's. No, that's a dove that's flying above. A dove calling. I wonder if it's not worth just checking behind us where this elephant was trumpeting. You never know. There could be something milling around here. This is a really good spot for Tingana, Tlalamba, and Tundi. All three of them use this area quite a lot. But it could be also African hawk eagles. Their nest is not far from here. And I've said this a lot in the past before. I had a tracker that was convinced that if you have large herds of elephants, then generally there's a leopard close by. I don't know why. He was just always like, if you have a big herd of elephants, there's there's a leopard close. I don't know why he believed it. He was quite right a lot of the time, and it's amazing how many times I've sat with elephants and we ended up finding a leopard by sitting with the ellies. So many different little calls. Now that other elephant was trumpeting from here, so I'm not sure. Alright, while I just investigate this little section here and check if maybe there's something lurking, let's send you back across, I think, to David, with the rest of the herd further to the north.
Well, we've just pulled into Buffelshoek Dam. It's a nice time with those elephants. Doesn't look like they've been at Buffelshoek Dam. Maybe they had enough water this morning at Treehouse Dam. Not much else going on around here. Little grebe is being very busy. Perhaps looking for a meal. Some other aquatic animal, a fish or a frog or tadpole or an insect. I wonder what it's searching for. Very cool little birds. I love how they lay their eggs. They make little like raft platforms. Of grass and vegetation. A lot of birds will either lay on the ground or lay in trees, and these kind of do in between. See if I can actually look in my book if there's a picture. See if I can show you, see if there's a picture of its nest. Lisa, you've asked, how does the winter affect the activity of the animals? Well, different animals are affected differently. Of course, your massive herbivores, your elephants and bulk grazers will struggle to get as much nutritious food and grass as in the summer. Things like hippo will have to move a lot further at night to find good grass. So for them it is a tougher time, whereas your predators are generally pretty unaffected, other than water scarcity. As long as there's a good water source in their territory, then they'll be just fine. Oftentimes I think they might even fare better, especially towards the end of winter or the end of a drought, when there's a lot of weak animals. Easy pickings for the predators. I don't see a picture of a little grebe's nest in my book. Maybe I'll see if my phone app has one. Here's a picture. I can you see this creek, Very cool. They make their nests out of floating aquatic plants, and they anchor it to an underground stick or an underground branch or something, so it doesn't float away. I just think it's a super cool nest. And then sometimes they cover it. Another picture here. That's a nest covered. Very, very cool. Nice and camouflaged. I just think that's a really cool nest. Well, this is one of my favorite spots on the property to just sit and listen. You hide on the damn wall and there's water. Oh, you're looking at the nest there, DK? I don't think so. Kind of almost looks like a nest, but I think those are just some accumulated sticks. Judy H, you've just given us an update that there's a little grebe nest on dam cam. Well, that's pretty cool. It is their time of laying. In South Africa they lay beginning of the year to about June. I'm actually gonna go check that out. Dam cam, it'll be cool to see. Linda, you've asked, how does the loss of trees affect the wildlife in the area? Well, it definitely affects wildlife. The loss of trees that we experience here is generally due to a very high elephant population that we've had growing in recent years. And as we see, they have to eat, and they eat a lot, and they cause a lot of damage. And in areas where they have obliterated tree species, it's generally the smaller things that you will find are affected. Little primates and little bush babies, some bird species, secretive antelope, little bushbuck and Nyala and things like that that require thickets and thick bush. Those are the species that will be most affected. There's a waterbuck on the other side there. I wonder what this waterbuck is doing. It's got the perfect bum circle. When we were kids, we used to get told that they sat on a toilet seat that had just been painted. He seems to be all alone. I wonder where the others are. Well, it has been very peaceful here. Let me give it another couple moments, see if something else comes down. Often patience pays off at water. Well, let's see what else we can go find, BK. While we do that, let's send you back over to Ngala.
We moved away from that beautiful water hole where those two elephants eventually moved into the bushes and we lost sight of them. We thought it would be a good idea for us to swing past the area where we had that lioness right in the beginning of the show. And she had moved off, which is very exciting news for us. And now we just need to try and figure out where she's gone towards. And so we've kind of preempted her movements and trying to figure out if she's returning back towards where she has left her cubs, and moving through one or two really nice open areas to see if we can catch her walking through this beautiful, beautiful afternoon light. We're in the thickets now, but as soon as we get into those open clearings, you'll see shortly how stunning the light is. It is absolutely breathtaking. It's just this looks basically like a field of gold that we'll be driving through, and if we're lucky enough to catch that lioness walking through there, it will probably be the moment of the day. So that's what we're trying to do. We have to have a little bit of luck because she could have moved anywhere. We didn't really see tracks from where she moved off, but we just looking at her past movements. I mean, whenever she's been that side, she's almost walked exactly the same route in the last 2 or 3 occasions that we've seen her. So we're basically zigzagging across that route to see if we can either see tracks crossing the road or hear alarm calls from different animals. If we're lucky enough, maybe even see her. As we come around one of these corners now, you'll see the beautiful open grasslands that I'm talking about. And if she's on her way here, I mean, she's probably walking straight down towards her cubs, but she could also try and take an opportunity to hunt. Elena, 6 years old, asking if dogs and cats dream. You say that you think your cats and dogs dream. And I mean, when I was growing up, I also had dogs and cats, and you'd always see them twitching and moving, and it looks like they were chasing something. So I think they do dream to a certain extent. I don't think it's just reflexes. I'd love to know what they dream about. All sorts of probably chasing animals and playing with other lions. So these are those big open clearings, and you can just see up ahead of us how beautiful the light is at the moment. And when we see her, she basically walks straight through here into the thickets to the right of us and then down and towards the riverbed. And what's interesting now is we haven't seen the herds of impalas or the herds of wildebeest that we see usually in this area, which might mean that they might have seen that lioness already and moved away. Speculating at the moment, but I did just see it. And did you see that bird in the tall tree right up ahead? So we've got a really, really beautiful raptor that Owen will try and zoom in on, and hopefully it'll be there we go. Oh, it looks like it might fly. It lifted up its tail and tried to make itself lighter. Called an African hawk eagle. Vera's asking how large Ngala is, and in terms of hectares, it's about 15,000 hectares, which roughly translates to about 32,000 acres, or 150 square kilometers. I hope those are unit or measurements that you understand. This African hawk eagle we've been seeing quite regularly recently, and it seems to be spending a lot of time around the river. We see it flying, especially in the early morning. So I wonder if it's not maybe is it feeding on something? Sure, let's see. I mean, unfortunately there are some bushes in the way, but it does look like it could be feeding on something small. just the way that it drops its head and pulls every now and again, but we haven't seen any fluff or feathers falling. So maybe it caught some sort of reptile. It's actually really nice to be able to be in these open clearings and just switch off and listen. So whilst we're watching this bird, I'll be scanning around, looking for any movement of this lioness. Maybe we can hear the distant alarm calls of you see something else there? Oh, it just flew. Okay. Yeah. We might spend a couple more moments in these open clearings, and then just before it gets dark we might just pop our heads into the river to see if she hasn't gone. But just have a look at the scene that we are driving through at the moment. It is absolutely beautiful. It's amazing. As soon as the sun starts dipping, the temperature drops, and it's almost time for me to put on my one of 3 different layers that I'm going to have on by the time the drive ends. So maybe see if we can get the sunset just before it dips behind the mountains. We'll see. Lindeka in Final Control said that she'll only be satisfied with my game drive if I find her 2 cheetahs. And so she's saying, stop looking at this beautiful sunset and carry on finding me cheetahs. It's wishful thinking. An Impala rutting that looked like it was alarm calling for a second. That is beautiful. Just look at that. It's absolutely incredible. The sun is setting really, really early. I mean, it's on my watch, it's about 8 minutes past 5, and it's probably only a couple of minutes away from touching the horizon. Let's see. The clouds just to the left of the sun are very soon going to turn into some beautiful colors. We'll hopefully catch the reds and the oranges and the yellows. It'll be a perfect time for a gin and tonic. I'm sure a few people are watching the sunset, especially if you've been on safari before. So there's definitely, I mean, when we drove past the last position where we had that lioness, the giraffe were pretty much standing at that, where that lioness was. And they were completely relaxed. So I wonder if she moved off before they got into the area and they didn't see her, or she had moved off pretty much just after we left and they'd seen her and realized that they had moved. Megan, I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's really nice just to spend this time to just switch off and take in what's around you. And this is when you start to realize that it's not necessarily about chasing these big animals like these lions. It's sometimes just a little bit of luck that we get to see them. But I think that an experience like this, sitting quietly and watching the sunset, is probably just as nice. Joined by a Burchell starling who's sitting close by here. It's calling. You might be able to hear that little clatter every now and again. There it is. You can hear a red-crested koran calling in the distance. During the winter time, we often get these very beautiful clear skies, and so sometimes you'll see the sun setting without any clouds around it. So it's quite I'm glad everyone's enjoying the sunset, so am I. And I was just saying, in the winter, usually you've got these beautiful big blue skies, but you don't necessarily get any clouds around it. And I think, especially once the sun starts to dip below the horizon, is when those clouds catch the color extremely well. And so, I mean, in wintertime, the sunsets are ridiculously short. It happens over the course of 2.5 minutes or so. It's actually quite cool. So it's just touched the horizon. Let's see how long it takes to set. We're a little bit late on this one, but let's quickly see. So until it completely disappears below the horizon, let's call it we're maybe 10-20 seconds late, but let's see how long it takes. I'm going to put my money on maybe 2 minutes 40 seconds, 2 minutes, maybe 50, somewhere around there. Carol, yeah, it is amazing, and we're literally just about to see the last bit of the sun disappear, and I am gonna stop my watch now. And it's like you said, it sets incredibly quickly. You don't understand how quickly it moves across our skies until you watch it disappear. And if we plus an extra 10-15 seconds onto when we started, it comes to 2 minutes and 32 seconds that it took for the sun to go completely below the horizon. So 2.5 minutes is incredibly quick. Okay, so I mean, we had an incredibly special moment watching that sunset, and like I said, it's just so nice to be able to sit and watch the color change and watch that sun disappear. We still haven't had any alarm calls of anything indicating that the Lioness is moving through this area. So whilst we look around for any signs for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll send you across to Tristan.
Well, we're with one of my favorite antelope, is a Nyala bull, and especially one that is philo-erecting, which means that it is pulling up its hair to show another male how big it is, and the other male is a little bit behind it, and so I'm hoping that other one will start coming towards it so that they actually do a proper display. He's not kind of fully displaying just yet. His tail's still down. When they pull their tail up, that's when they're really displaying. But you can see the slow, methodical walk. There we go. You see the tail starting to rise a little bit? You see that? So it's a slow, methodical walk, and it's to try and intimidate the other males, to try and make their body appear bigger and larger, so that the other male, look, isn't that cool? And you see how they display that white as well of the tail. So a lot of the time people don't know that Nyalas have very bushy white tails, and that's to show this other male, listen, I'm not scared of you, I'm going to try and intimidate you and show you that I'm bigger than you are. And this dance can take place over a space of a few minutes that they walk around each other, or it can last for quite a long time, into hours, as they try and compete. Generally, it's over females, but sometimes if it's a male that they don't know and they come together, then they'll do it again. The other male is going to come just to the left now of where this guy is. It's a really cool thing to see. They're such intriguing animals. There's the other male there. So you see how he's posturing, lateral presentation, which is very, very, very common in animals that are trying to intimidate another one with size. So they make their body appear big, show the broadest part of their body, which is the lateral side, and they try and then kind of push that competitor away. And you see how he drops his head? That's also to show those horns coming forward, and then the slow movement. So cool. Monique in London, it's nice to hear from you. It's been a long time since I've answered one of your questions, but it's good to hear from you. I hope that you're well. You say it really is amazing. It is an incredible thing to watch, and like I said, there's very few antelope that do this kind of thing. They're the really passive individuals, so the last resort for them is to try and lock horns and actually hurt one another. Instead, they're going to use these very visual displays to try and establish their dominance and to try and work out who is the bigger of the two. So it's a very kind of gentle way, or gentleman's way, of doing things. Part of the reason why it's like that is if you look at their horn structure, you see their horns, unlike Impalas and waterbuck, who clash quite a lot, their horns are very smooth. They don't have those ridges on them. And so if they are to come together and hit each other with horns, those horns are going to slide and move, and there's a very real chance of stabbing one another in the face or the neck. And so much better for them to try and have a different display that stops that from happening, and make sure that they don't actually kill each other. Ultimately, they're not trying to eat one another, they're just trying to establish who is the stronger of the two. But it looks like he's departing. The other male is standing kind of roughly where he was when we first saw him, and this guy has decided to walk away. So maybe the other one is just bigger and stronger to this particular fella, and he's decided, I'm not going to deal with this, and is going to move away. I don't know, but there's no females that I can see. So normally when there's females, you can see who wins it, because that's the one that goes towards the females. In this case, I'm not 100% sure, but now we just got to make everything look a lot better. Bob, you say you've never seen this before, and it is cool. It is a very cool thing to see. Like I say, it's not something that people often witness, particularly because Nyala are not that widespread through, well, didn't used to be very widespread through the Kruger system. They are now. Their numbers have really skyrocketed over the course of the last sort of 20 years. But if you're from anywhere in Zululand, then you'll know these guys quite well. But it's a very, very cool thing to witness and to watch. You see, the other one is right where this one walked. So I would imagine that this is the victor. He's come along and he's just kind of said, I'm not interested in your display, I don't care, I'm going to push you out of here anyway, and is going to go and eat and nibble away right where the other one was standing. But aren't they just the most magnificent looking animals? I find them absolutely beautiful. GDH, I was waiting for this at some point in this career with WildEarth. And I'm surprised actually that I've escaped this to this point. I mean, after 3.5 years, I would have expected it to have come sooner, but GDH is saying that she doesn't recall me doing the Nyala dance before, and she's referring to the fact that most presenters here have in some way mimicked a Nyala dance at some point. The best one being when a certain fella called James Hendry challenged Biceps Byron, who was another presenter of ours, to a challenge, and the two of them did this around on a road. It is hilariously funny and is in the archive somewhere, so I'm sure you'll be able to find it, or I'm sure GDH or somebody will have a clip of it and post it up for others to see. But it was very, very funny with the two of them doing it. So no, I haven't, GDH, and maybe at some point I shall. I'm not one that has the kind of mind for dramatics like James Hendry, but you know, we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll need to take a leaf out of the kudu. I take a leaf out of the kudu's book and add a bit of foliage to my neck before I do it, just as a bit of extra kind of thing. Emma Openshaw is saying that I should do it now. Emma, I'll do it now if I can drive to Final Control and have you guys in Final Control do it as well. Then we can all do it now together as a team. But I'm pretty sure that the ladies in Final Control won't do it with me. So, also, I don't want to chase the Nyala away right now, so we'll have to leave it for another time. This poor Nyala will probably think, what is this getting out of the car? I certainly have long enough hair for it at the moment. Imagine if I could, like, stretch my hair out and make it long and mane like these guys have. I reckon I could be quite an intimidating Nyala, that's for sure. Except I don't have any of those white markings. Although I do, actually. My grey hairs on the side of my head. Can be my little white stripes that the Nyalas have got. So the FC says deal. Okay. Brave. You do know that you guys are going to have to do this on camera. It's not just doing it in Final Control and saying that you did it. Maybe tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon at the start of the drive. Before we head out, we'll just start drive from there. And we can educate the kids how to do the Nyala dance. Tomorrow, maybe. Okay, we'll see. All right. The excuses have started already, everybody. The FC girls are saying now they need to practice because they don't know it. Like we get to practice anything when we're live and get thrown under the bus like this. The good thing is, though, is that I am quite impervious to making a fool of myself. I certainly don't mind it. I've been laughed at many times and have made a fool of myself on this very platform more times than I care to remember. And so I'm quite happy for it to happen again. But it's, the FC girls often have a lot to say until such time as the camera points towards them, and then they all go running and scurrying away. So we'll have to test them. Just now. Okay, you know what? I haven't been to the Hyena Den. I might as well pop in there because I should go and say hello to those little ones. So let's go pop into the Hyena Den and see what's up there. While we do that, let's send you back across to David.
Well, we've just parked up here on a little bit of a high point and took in the sunset. It was an excellent sunset. Very, very beautiful. And also just admiring these mountains. Don't stop and look at them enough, although they're always in view if you look. These are the Mariepskop Mountains, the Mariepskop mountain range. I actually say it's part of the escarpment that runs from Cape Town all the way up the east coast of Africa. So I've read. Part of the Great Valley Rift. And further down in South Africa, they're called the Drakensberg Mountains. All part of the same range, the same rift. And the little town that I live in, called Hoedspruit, is right on the footstep of these mountains. And a lot of free time we spend up in those mountains. There's some beautiful spots that you can go visit, go camp and get right to the very edge and have an incredible look out over the bushveld. There's beautiful rivers and picnic spots. Magical places to visit in those mountains. And it gets nice and misty with a very different vegetation up there. It's called fynbos. Very different to the vegetation we have down here due to the altitude. It's about 2,000 meters above sea level. So a different world. And it actually is a very important tourist attraction in this region because it forms what is called the Blade Canyon, which I think is the third largest canyon in the world and the largest green canyon. It's a beautiful canyon. It's a very scenic drive you can do all the way along the top. see Nak here agreeing. This is a beautiful view, absolutely gorgeous. Always like to take time and just look at the mountains. Wonder how they formed, how long they've been standing there. If you look up on the top right of the screen, you can actually see a tower. There's I think it was in the 50s, a military base was created up there. Still a radar station, there's still a military presence. Fashand, sorry, I'm not sure I got that name clearly. He's saying it looks like a layered cake. I suppose you're looking at the valleys before the mountain. It's amazing on a scenic point like this how you can see the undulation of the earth. Well, we've been sitting on this high point also in earnest hope of hearing some audio of a predator. Haven't heard anything yet, so we're gonna slowly continue on our way and do a little bit more distance before it gets dark. Wish us luck. Let's see what we can find. Well, it sounds like around the Hyena den, so let's send you over to him, see what the update is.
We have arrived at the Hyena den, and the good news is that the little ones are out, as you can see, which is very, very cool. Hello, little guys. It's nice to meet you for the first time. They seem like they're quite brave. And quite curious already. I mean, they didn't run inside when we came here. They just sat there next to Ribbon, looking at us and busy sniffing away, and they're pottering about. You can see this one has got itself a stick that it's going to play around with and bite the leaves because, well, it's that time now where we start to investigate everything. They're at that age where they're not super wobbly, and so now it's time to actually explore. And sticks and leaves are the best game ever. Ribbon must love the fact that there's little branches and leaves that hang around very close to this den, because that will certainly keep these little ones busy. The one on the right you can see is just cuddling a little bit, showing a bit of affection. That's cute, man. Now, of course, I have no idea which one is which. Lauren sent me a thing. I was about to say Robin, which is a mixture of Ribbon and Lauren, but that apparently is Bow and Tie is the name of these two, but I have no idea which one is which yet. As we know, my knowledge of the hyenas and how to ID them is not as good as some of my compatriots. They certainly spend a lot more time with the clan than what I do, but nice to always see hyenas at a den. They're the most special things. So Bo has white eyebrows apparently, and Ty doesn't. I'm not going to lie to you, both of their eyebrows look pretty bright. Maybe Bo on the right and Ty on the left. But anyway, I think hyena dens for me are one of the most incredible things. It's something that I wish every guest that went on safari could experience, purely because they have such a negative connotation, hyenas. Most people that come out here have this oh, hyenas, gross, hate them, don't like them, they stinky, and they're horrible animals. And quite frankly, they're not stinky. They can smell when they've been at a carcass, but lions smell when they've been at a carcass, leopards smell when they've been at a carcass that is rotten. So it's not that they are stinky animals, they actually groom themselves a lot and they stay fairly clean. They do get fleas, unfortunately, particularly in dens like this, but for the most part, they try and sort of keep themselves as clean as possible, as most animals would do. But the thing about dens is that it shows the really soft side from hyenas. It shows just how caring and nurturing they can be, as well as how cute little baby hyenas are. A lot of people think of hyenas as these monstrous creatures that do all kinds of bad things, but when you come here, you can see how caring and how playful the little ones are, and it often softens everyone's kind of view of them. And so I always think that a hyena den is the greatest thing to change a perception on hyenas. Seeing them devouring carcasses and ripping out bits of flesh and full of blood doesn't help their general image, but this is obviously a very, very different kettle of fish. Unfortunately, it looks like Ribbon has decided she's out of here. You can see her walking off and moving away, and I suspect the reason why is because there's some impalas that are walking past. Now, sometimes impalas, if they spot a hyena or just the spots of the coat in this dingy light, will alarm call, and that means that it'll attract attention to the fact that there's a den here. And so what I think she's doing is being quite smart. I think she's walking off, making sure, firstly, that it is just impalas, and secondly, to try not attract too much attention to the den itself, so that the little ones can be safe, which is pretty cool. Look at these two. You two are trouble, aren't you? Very, very cute, these little guys. And I say guys, it's quite difficult to sex them at this age. Thomas, you say you are now a fan of hyenas thanks to WildEarth, and I'm really glad to hear that. I think that goes for quite a lot of people. I think it really started with the Djuma clan in the beginning, and Jamie did a lot of work to keep the Djuma clan in kind of everyone's hearts. And then when she went to the Mara, and we spent so much time with the North clan, that really sparked an interest for a lot of people. And then following that, Trishala and Lauren and James and Jamie, and the way that they went about looking after the sort of interests of the hyenas and spending as much time as they did, certainly has made many people hyena fans, which is great. They're such an underrated animal, and highly intelligent, super complex social structures that are fascinating to observe and to watch. And I just wish that we could spend a lot more time with our Djuma clan. Unfortunately, the terrain here really doesn't allow us to follow them as well as you can in the Mara. In the Mara, you can see them from a long way, and you can kind of even follow them at night better than what you can here. Here, they just disappear in 2 seconds into these thickets, and it becomes really tough, other than at den sites, to spend prolonged periods of time with the hyenas. So, it's tricky, but they are incredibly fascinating creatures. And now that we're on Simambili, we'll see the other clan in the area, which is the Elephant Plains clan. Big clan of hyenas. I'm not sure what the numbers are now, but when I started at WildEarth and I came from Simambili, at that point, the clan was almost 50 members. So it was a big clan, and they are quite a force to be reckoned with. In fact, a few days ago, the Nkumas killed a buffalo close to Simambili camp, and apparently they got an absolute hiding from the hyenas. The hyenas chased them off the buffalo and took it. So that gives you an idea of just how strong they are. They managed to push 6 adult female lions off their kill, which is crazy. So I think the hyenas were a bit lucky that the evokers by then had moved off to go and drink water or something, but they weren't actually at the kill, and so hyenas took it over and became theirs. What's really cool, though, is to see how trusting these two are of us already. Renal, I think it's really dependent on the individual hyenas. Some probably will prepare a little bit earlier than others. What's interesting with hyenas, though, is that they generally use dens that they've successfully had in the past. So this is a den that we know was used at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And so she's probably just come and had a little look around, and it wouldn't have taken her long. It would have been a few days of just quickly maintaining the burrow and just quickly cleaning it out, and getting it ready again, and then she would give birth. It's not a prolonged period of time. It's not like dogs. Dogs are a lot more selective of their den. Dogs will run around and we're talking wild dogs, and they'll check termite mound after termite mound, and they'll sniff and they'll excavate and they'll look, and it's almost, it's sort of 3-4 week build up to them actually having their little ones, whereas hyenas know roughly where their old dens are. They'll go and investigate them in the course of a few days, dig them out fairly quickly, and that's it. And most of these dens won't have much to do. If they've been dug out before, as long as there's not something like a warthog living in there or porcupines, then generally it's okay. And it's not to say that sometimes they won't actually even share their dens with warthogs. It's been recorded before, hyenas and warthogs in the same mound, which is very odd, but has happened. I'm obviously a little nervous of staying here without Ribbon, and now that they've gone down and in, I think I'm going to leave. As Ribbon was here, she's just moved off now, but when she was standing close by, I was happy to stay. But now that she's kind of moved off, I think we're going to leave these little ones to themselves. We don't want to attract too much attention to them. We know that at night sometimes, predators will follow our lights and various other things. Even though we don't have a lot of lights on the car, they hear us talking or they hear some sort of commotion and they come and check it out. So better that we move on and leave the little ones so that they're safe. But super nice to meet them and to see them. And it was really a nice little playful bit of time that we had with the little ones. Yeah, she's moved off. Ribbon was sitting on the edge of this track, but looks like she's moved away with these impalas that have approached here, so we'll leave her to it. Okay, I'm gonna carry on. It's now time for Leopard to complete a epic afternoon, and so while I go looking for that, let's send you back up to Ngala and see if they had any luck on their side.
As you can see, we just switched over to infrared. That's why I'm in black and white. Just because it's getting quite dark now, and I've got the spotlight out. I'm scanning from side to side. We moved away from the area where that lioness was potentially moving towards, and we decided to come and check this area last season or last winter. I was telling Owen now that there was a pretty regular viewing of a serval, and so we thought that we would come into this area and see if maybe now that the grass is starting to get a little bit shorter, see if we could potentially see any sign of a serval moving through this area. We haven't had any luck whatsoever yet. We saw an elephant in the distance, we saw some impala, but absolutely no tracks or signs of serval yet. It was actually quite an amazing thing. It all of a sudden just appeared, and it was completely relaxed to the vehicles. We hadn't even started habituating it. It just rocked up and it was relaxed. And we would see it at this time of day, sometimes earlier enough to get some photos, and we would watch it walking towards us. We would watch it hunting. I actually even managed to watch it kill a scrub hare once, and it did the whole classic. If anyone's seen servals hunting, they've got these incredibly big ears, I guess similar to a wild dog. And it was moving through the grass. It stopped, got into the pouncing position, and then a little bit, I guess, like an Arctic fox, if you've ever seen videos of it jumping and diving headfirst into the snow. The serval does a similar thing, and it jumped up quite high and it pounced and it lifted its head up with a fully grown adult scrub hare. So that was quite an exceptional sighting. And I mean, we saw it pretty regularly. I mean, probably just under 50% of the time you would see it. So you'd literally just drive 3 roads almost in a triangle and you had a very good chance of seeing it. So we're driving those exact same 3 roads, see if we get any luck here. Like I said, no luck with that lioness. We did, however, manage to see that sub-ad or that young male, except he was in an area where the signal was bad and we couldn't get a very good view of him. So I couldn't see the condition of him, if he had deteriorated or anything, but it seemed like he was just resting and conserving energy. So I don't have any specific updates for you on him, unfortunately, for today. but maybe Rowan will be able to help you out a little bit. Sugarbits is asking what animal has been around here the longest, and we'll have to look at some of the territorial animals who have found their homes in the property of Ngala. And I mean, that Pride of Lions has been around since about 2011 on and off, so that's 9-10 years or so that they've been around. I'm sure there's some elephants that move around this area, but they kind of leave the property and come back, and same with wild dogs. I guess probably some hyena clans would be some of the species that stay the longest. And it was actually really cool. One of the rangers the other day was going through some of our old files, and he managed to see some photos of hyena dens. And there's a den site quite close to the Ngala tented camp that has been active from about 1970, and it's still showing signs of activity today. It's not properly active now, but there's a good chance that that might be from the same clan. So that is over 50 years that potentially the same clan, or at least descendants of the same clan, have been using that same den site. Oh, that is beautiful. And can you, how's those two Marulas? We just want to show you a quick scene. See, oh, there we go. So we're going to just switch out of infrared just so you can see the colors, and we're looking at those two silhouetted Marula trees, and just look at that color. It is absolutely beautiful. Reds, oranges, pinks, purples, blues. You got the whole spectrum here. And those trees just make it. It's interesting, they almost seem like they grow together, and instead of growing towards one another where their branches would interfere with one another, they've grown out. So the one on the right hand side, the majority of the branches are growing right. The one on the left is growing left. It might be a coincidence. Sometimes these trees will not really, especially if it's the same species, they'll stop and they won't really interfere with one another. It could also be, I mean, elephants breaking branches and stopping them from touching. But that is just such a cool scene to end the afternoon. See my spotlight here. All that. Can you imagine if we see a leopard in that tree, just silhouetted perfectly, standing up and stretching? Or even a serval waking up? That would be quite spectacular. Let's just see at the almost just off of center on the right hand side of the screen, there's that little faint star that we can see. Or not a star actually, it's the first evening star. It's called Venus. Jameson, 10 years old, is asking if there are skunks. We don't get skunks specifically. I'm sure we get species that are very closely related. And the first one that comes to mind is a species called in Afrikaans they call it a stinkmeishond, or a striped polecat, which that's another cool one. If you directly translate that, stinkmeishond, smelly mouse dog. So I'll quickly see if I can show you a photo of what it looks like, and it looks pretty much exactly the same as a skunk, and it also is capable of releasing. There's also a few things like mongooses that might. Where's it? Polecat. There you go. Here we go. Can you shine here? I hope it will be enough light. So this is the striped polecat that looks pretty much identical to what a skunk would look like. There we go. It's better. So it's got the same colors, black and white, and those black and white opposing colors are a warning for other animals to say that there's a foul odor, don't come anywhere near me. I know honey badgers do the same thing. And you'll see it all the way from, I mean, it's quite a common species, but right the way, or not a common, but it occurs all the way through Africa. right up to Sub-Sahara. And I mean, another name for it is called a Zarilla. So it's either called a striped polecat, or a smelly mouse dog, or a Zarilla. I've only seen one of them when I was at Pinder. It was literally just a flash across the road, and that was it. Yeah, switching over to IR, infrared. So whilst we are continuing moving back slowly in the direction of the lodge, we'll send you across to Tristan, who's also driving around.
Oh, we've just stopped to look at this beautiful Diker in the grass, sniffing the air. Lovely viewing them in IR. They're completely undisturbed by our presence, not blinded by a light. I've just been told apparently it's International Bee Day. I did not even know that there was an International Bee Day. I suppose to recognize our very important bees and everything that they do in our ecosystem to keep things going. Without bees, we would be in a lot of trouble. So I suppose the day is dedicated to their conservation. Well, it's been a quiet afternoon, but it's been lovely. It's been nice and chilled. We've spent some time sitting on high points and listening, hoping to hear some audio. But nothing just yet.
Okay. We have just found this genet that's at the fork of the tree. For a split second, we saw the eye shadow with our spotlight, and I thought that it could be the serval that we were looking for, but unfortunately or not unfortunately, I guess it's still cool to see a genet, but it's not the serval that we were after. And see, it looks like it's spending a lot of time just listening and looking to see what's happening in the grass around it. And so there would probably be a small little hole in there that it would have rested up for the whole entire day. And now that it's starting to get dark, it would spend a lot more time getting active looking for food. And so I'm sure it's just wanting to make sure that there's no potential threats around before it ducks down into the grass and begins its evening. So we're using a combination here of the red filter as well as the infrared to give us this beautiful undisturbed view of the serval. I mean, this genet, and it looks like it might come down the tree. It's certainly listening and watching. If you can, just look at the different colors that it has around its face. It's these beautiful black and white stripes. And if we can, I mean, it might be a bit far away, but the ears are so busy. So it's a nocturnal species. It will definitely depend on its eyesight, but I'm sure its hearing is also phenomenal. And when you watch a genet close up, its ears will move they constantly twitch back and forth, and they can move around a lot more than what a cat's ears might be able to. See on the other side of the tree how the tail there is sticking out with long black and white stripes. It is very cool to see. Look, it looks like there's something of interest. Maybe it's listening to small little rodents moving around potentially. Kathy from Ohio, you're asking what family it's related to, and I'm pretty sure, I'll have to double check for you, but I think they're part of the Viridae family, which puts them in the same family as mongooses. And so things like the dwarf mongoose you've been seeing quite a lot on drive, banded mongoose would probably be some of their close relatives, but it is something that I'll have to just double check. Oh, there's a yawn. That's a good sign. Always a good sign when we see a yawn. I'd love to see how it scales down the tree, if it decides to climb down step by step, or if it just runs and basically jumps down. Oh, we've been lucky. I mean, I haven't seen a genet in months, and in the last 2 of my game drives, pretty much right towards the end, we've seen 2. So 2 for 2 is not a bad record with genets. So that spot patterning that it has there, it's like a mixture of spots and stripes. It would, I guess in a way, would be quite similar to a serval stripe pattern. I mean, having a look at the 2 different species, a serval is a cat, so I mean it's much more closely related to different types of cats, but the legs are probably about 3 times the length. The tail's much shorter, probably about half the length of that tail, and then the ears are even bigger than that. See, every now and again I catch a reflection that happened on the left hand side of the screen. I think that might just be a spider web moving around in the wind. You wonder what it's waiting for. I mean, it might just be listening and trying to find an opportunity. It would go after little mice, it will feed on little insects. And this is the nice thing about these drives ending off towards the evening time, is we get the opportunity to show you a few of the species that we would never usually see during the daytime. And I mean, a lot of the time, because they're nocturnal, they're not very used to the vehicle, so they spend literally, you'll see a flash across the road and then that's it. So for us to be able to sit and watch a genet like this is really, really spectacular. It sounds like there's some Impalas that are calling. In the distance it seems more like it's a rat though. So we're probably going to leave this genet and let it climb down the tree. so hopefully we won't disturb it too much. But in the meantime, we'll send you across to Tristan, and I hope I've got it right this time, who's still in Djuma. Let's see what he's up to.
Indeed, Eric. Well done. Hopefully your Impala's alarming bring you something as well. We've had very little luck. We also had a little Genet now, but it wasn't nearly as relaxed as it sounds like Eric's Genet was. Our Genet ran away from us into the long grass where we could just see one glowing eye, and that was it. And then it ran even further, and so we couldn't show you all the Genets at Djuma. I actually had a really nice Genet sighting. When was it? Last night or the night before? It was the night before, maybe. With BK, we had literally just closed the show and finished it, and this Genet ran out onto the road, and it just sat there for a while, and then it went to our left and went onto the stump and sat on the stump right next to the car. It was ridiculous. It was within a few meters. It's like always the things that happen when you're not live. And we were able to even kind of start the car, and it didn't move off, which is very unusual for Genets. Genets typically are not a huge fan of the noise of an engine, but this Genet was quite happy just to sit and take it easy. So I was a bit annoyed that we had finished our drive at that point, but it's the way it goes, unfortunately. Also, unfortunately, is there is 000 sign of leopards on Djuma today. Those tracks that we had of Tundi were old, as David pointed out. We also had very little sign anywhere down this western side. There was no tracks to work with, and there's been no alarm calls today. I've sat for long periods with the car off and nothing, so back to the drawing board, I'm afraid, tomorrow. Try and figure this out, because we can't have such a drought of leopards on Djuma. It's ridiculous. I won't allow it any further. It's my stern warning to the leopards tonight, is to get their acts together. They need to have a little chat with the Ellies and then see how to perform, because the Ellies are certainly on top form at the moment. A lot of you are saying that you love the Ellies today with us. It was very special. It was nice to have those Ellies. In fact, I've had the most wonderful elephant sighting since I've been back. I don't know what it is, but the Ellie bulls have been giving me the best sightings. They've been coming up, and they've been fairly kind of interactive with us, and have really very cool about the way that they've gone about business, and they've let us see them, and there's a Diker, and they've let us kind of really have these incredible sightings. So it's been super special. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, if you have enjoyed these drives and have kept you sane during the lockdown, please remember to support us. It will go a long way into keeping us going and making sure that we can keep entertaining you and keep providing you with these wilderness experiences that I think are keeping many people sane during a very, very crazy time in all of our lives, that's for sure. So, come on, last minute leopard. Please, Kalamba. I think it's you that needs to break the ice. That's what I think. Anyway. Alright, so it's unfortunately that time where we've got to all head home. Hopefully you enjoyed your afternoon with us and all the different things that we had. It seemed like a very productive afternoon all round for every guide that was out. So from David, Eric and myself, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning bright and early for our sunrise safari.